Yellowhammer Radio with Cliff Sims. Welcome to your Tuesday edition, your St. Patrick's Day edition of Yellowhammer Radio. Show number 2, show number 1 in the books yesterday. Didn't run off the rails quite yet. And today, I tell you what, we're not even going to waste any time today. I mean, we're just going to get right into it with our senior senator, Senator Richard Shelby, joining us on the show today. Senator, how you doing?
Fine, good afternoon up here in Washington.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. Let's get right into it. I want to start by talking about Loretta Lynch, the president's nominee for Attorney General. You pushed for confirmation proceedings to not begin until Republicans took control of the Senate. Now we're almost 6 months since Attorney General Holder said he was leaving. The vote still hasn't happened yet. Now, the White House has called the delay of Loretta Lynch's confirmation unconscionable. My question for you is, do you think that she'll ultimately be confirmed, and will you support her when that vote comes?
First of all, I will not support her, period. I hope the vote will not come, and I hope that it will not come, period, until the Democrats quit filibustering our legislation up here. That's what Senator McConnell has said Sunday, and I agree with him on this. Let me tell you this. I've met with Loretta Lynch in my office several weeks back, and basically I asked her what's going on with the president on his granting executive amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants and so forth. And what's your position on it? She's basically said that she thought that was right. Well, I couldn't support her on that alone. She's supposed to defend the Constitution, but what she wants to do is to defend the president, and that's wrong. Well, so, if she gets there, Cliff.
So the New York Times actually mentioned this today. I mean, this has been one of the main criticisms that we've heard is that Loretta Lynch is supportive in broad terms of what the president did in granting executive amnesty to 4, 5, 6 million illegal immigrants, whatever the number is. And they said, and I know this is a shocker, the New York Times criticizing Republicans, but they said they felt like it was an unreasonable expectation of a president's cabinet member that they would buck him on one of his major policy initiatives. So you don't feel like that it's unreasonable to expect her to hold the line even against a president that has appointed her?
I really don't, because I believe the Attorney General of the United States should look at the law of the land, not just be loyal to the president. She's not the president's personal attorney. She would be, if she's confirmed, the Attorney General of the United States, and they're supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer, and she would be looking the other ways. He's breaking the law, as I see it. I couldn't support somebody like that. I hope that the Republicans, if we get a vote, if there is a vote, that we will vote her down, but I'm not sure of that.
Another area that you guys have had some serious disagreements on the president lately is with what the administration is doing as far as negotiations with Iran. Now, you were one of 47 senators who signed on to a letter to the leaders of Iran warning them that any nuclear deal that they strike with the president would be subject to congressional approval and would likely not last beyond President Obama's term in office. Now, what compelled you to sign on to that letter?
Basically, that I don't have a lot of confidence in the president and the Secretary of State in their negotiations with Iran. It looks to me like they're chasing a deal. They're desperate for a deal, and Iran will get basically what they want, and it will be an executive action. In other words, it will be something between them and the President of the United States. It won't be a treaty. We want, if we're going to have something that's meaningful, we need a treaty where that anything the president agrees to would have to be ratified by 67 votes in the U.S. Senate. And he's making sure that doesn't happen. So I'm very suspicious of all this. I think that they're going to be outgunned in the negotiations. I hope there will not be an agreement, because I believe it will be a bad agreement.
Now, they said, the administration has, especially Secretary of State Kerry, has said that it's unprecedented for Congress to get involved in foreign policy the way that you guys did on this letter. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, it's not unprecedented. Senator Byrd, when he was a majority leader of the U.S. Senate, and they were dealing with the Russians on the SALT talks, he excuse me, he personally went to Russia, I think, and also sent a letter and told them, look, don't forget the role of the U.S. Senate. Senator Kerry, when he was new in the Senate, he was doing the same, something similar, dealing with fighting the communist guerrillas when we were fighting them and aiding and abetting our allies in Central America. Kerry was on the other side of that, and he was trying to get around President Reagan on that, which I thought he was wrong. But what we did this intentionally, to 47 of us, to send a message to the world and to the Iranians that there's a Congress here that he's going to have to deal with, and be careful what you sign there, because it might not be binding for very long.
Now, is there any scenario that you could imagine in which a deal with Iran would be acceptable?
Well, I could imagine one, if they would forego and say we're not going to build nuclear weapons, because it will be a game changer in the Middle East for them to have them. They're not going to do that. They're going to continue. Excuse me. They're going to continue to go down that road to build nuclear weapons. They're determined to do it, and they got a lot of help from the Russians and the Chinese here. So, short of them foregoing that, I don't know of any deal that's going to keep them from having nuclear weapons down the road. That's what we should be trying to do, is stop the arms race in that area.
Now let's switch gears a little bit away from foreign policy and some of the battles that you guys have with the administration right now, and let's bring it back home to Alabama here. Now, you're running for re-election in 2016. I'd love to hear what is your pitch to voters. I mean, right now there isn't any, you don't have any opposition yet, and honestly, I'd probably be surprised if there was any significant opposition to you in the primary, which is just about the only game in town these days here in Republican deep red Alabama. But let's just imagine for a second that someone does come up and say they're going to challenge you in the election. I mean, what is your pitch to the voters for why they should keep you in D.C.?
Well, I'm going to run on my record of service to the nation and to the people of Alabama. I've got a lot of energy left. This is my 5th term up here. Because the people have sent me, I have been able to be in some powerful committee positions, and that's helped Alabama immensely, and I hope the nation. But at the end of the day, you run, and it's up to the people to elect you, and I'm hoping that people will elect me again. I've got a lot of energy. I've been in 56 counties already this year, and holding some type of meeting, and I'm going to continue to do that. So I believe I have a lot to offer, but you got to look at my record. I'm proud of my record and of service to the people of Alabama and the nation, as I said, and I have to run on it, and will proudly do so.
Now, one of the things I think that folks have got to give you some credit for, and something we have followed at Yellowhammer News, is every single year since you've been in Washington, since you've been in the Senate, you have traveled to every county in the state. You do these county visits every year. It's really kind of become this like legendary thing. I mean, you've done like 1,900 of them since you've been in the U.S. Senate, and you've continued to do that this year. What have you been hearing as you've traveled the state from voters? What issues do you hear are important to folks here in Alabama right now?
Always the economy is near the top of the order. People are interested in jobs for themselves, the economy in general, jobs and hope for their children, which is natural. But a lot of other issues come up, the national security issues, the trouble in the world, the challenges we have in the world. People are pretty well informed, and they know what's going on, and I'm happy for that. And we engage in a dialogue on it, on all those issues. And that's been one of the great things that since I've been in the U.S. Senate. You mentioned that I've had over 1,900 public meetings. Now, a lot of meetings that, in addition to that, but I think it's very important for a senator or a congressman to go home, to engage the constituents, to be accessible to the constituents, and to represent his constituents. And I've tried to do that overall.
Now, one of the big issues that we're seeing right here on the state level as the legislature has gotten back into session is the governor has floated a $541 million tax increase, and it kind of surprised a lot of people with that. Now, from your perspective, the federal level, deeply engaged in a lot of the economic development projects that have come into the state over the years. I know that you had established a relationship with the executives of Airbus, for instance, years before they ultimately came into Alabama with the major economic development projects that they did down there. So you've been deeply engaged on all levels with these major economic development projects that we've had so much success with. And I find that it seems to be the pitch to these folks is come to Alabama. You're going to get a low tax, low regulatory environment. We are open for business, essentially. Do you have any concerns that the governor kind of switching directions and suddenly deciding to float such a giant tax increase that will deter economic development on some level?
Well, I don't think it's going to help any. I can tell you from my experience in the state government, once upon a time I was in the state Senate and being in Congress, the House and the U.S. Senate, that the spending will always run ahead of the revenue. So it's not going, you'll never have enough taxes or enough money to pay for the programs that are already on the books, either federal or state. So taxing is not the answer to it. It might be a temporary answer to it, but people are very alert to taxes, and they should be, because ultimately everybody's going to pay them. You know, you hear the old story, we're going to tax the banks, we're going to tax the utilities, we're going to tax the corporate world. Well, all that's going to be passed on to all of us, right. The consumer. People are smarter than you think.
Yeah. Well, one last question here. Speaking of the economy, and kind of turn our attention back to the president for just a second. I saw an interview that kind of piqued my interest yesterday. The president interview with Vice News, and he was talking about global warming, his climate change agenda, and he said pretty explicitly that he thinks Republicans are going to have to change their position on climate change. What's your take on how the president's climate agenda is impacting the economy specifically here in Alabama?
Well, the president has basically started a war on coal. We produce a lot of coal. We use a lot of coal in our utilities that have kept our power rates, very competitive around the country. And I think it's a short-term deal on his part, and I've fought it. I've opposed it. He's trying to do things by regulation that he couldn't even do through the law or through the Congress. And I just believe that this president's record is awful. And I've opposed him on a lot of issues, plan to oppose him on more. And the sad thing is he's got a little over a year and a half left in this term. But I think America could do better. We don't have a chance in 2016.
Counting down the days to that
Count
that
down
election.
the day and pray.
That's right. That's right. Well, Senator, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you come back again. We'll do it. That's Senator Richard Shelby, our senior U.S. Senator. Pretty good interview. I mean, you could tell. I'll give the guy some credit for being 80 years old. I was in D.C. a few weeks back in his office and just talking to him, and we got to talking about Alabama football, which gets him. He probably gets more fired up about that than any of his political stuff. Like, he just loves Alabama football.
It's in the blood, man.
Yeah, I know it is. And he got to talking about how good J.K. Scott, the punter from Alabama, is, and he gets up and like grabs something off a desk. I don't even remember what it was, and punts it across the room.
Nice.
Like amazing, like form and everything. It was pretty. It was incredible.
I understand, because that kid can stop it on a dime and give you a nickel change, man.
That's true. That's true. All right, so that's Senator Richard Shelby. Good interview there. Glad to have him join us. Hopefully we'll have him back soon. We got a lot more to talk about today. St. Patrick's Day. We're going to revisit the most famous viral video in Alabama history.
Oh, my God.
I'm very excited about this. We'll be back in just a second.
This is Yellowhammer Radio with Cliff Sims.